We all love the beach, but have you heard the story of the suntan and a group of sick kids who helped launch a billion-dollar beauty product? This is the tale of the beach body and a woman who noticed something strange that's keeping a lot of Americans from getting skin cancer after a century of obsession with the suntan. Let's start with something that might rearrange your brain a little. For most of human history, a suntan was not considered attractive. It was not glamorous. It was not something you showed off at a party. A tan meant you worked outside. It meant you were poor. And if you were a woman in the 1800s, a tan was practically a social disaster.
So how did we get from there to here? From a place where we avoided the sun altogether, to a place where we worshiped the sun, then to a place where we liquefied the sun so that we could avoid it altogether. Well, that's what I call American curiosity. And this story has more layers than a blistering sunburn.
Let's go back, way back. Picture a wealthy American woman in the 1880s. She's walking in the summer heat in a full-length dress, long gloves buttoned to the elbows, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow across her face, and a parasol overhead just to be safe. That's how they did it then, to look successful. Pale skin meant she did not labor. It said quietly but clearly, "I have not spent a single hour working outside. Sunshine has never touched me." Meanwhile, farmers, sailors, servants, and laborers outside, well, they were the ones with brown arms and weathered faces. The tan belonged to them, and nobody envied it. And that wasn't just an American thing. Throughout the Western world, fashion, medicine, and social class all agreed pale was refined, pale was protected, pale was the goal. And then, almost overnight, everything flipped. To understand how the tan got a complete image makeover, you have to understand what was happening to the world around it. Industrialization was pulling millions of workers off the land and into factories, offices, and shops. Suddenly, much of the laboring class was indoors. The pale complexion was no longer rare. And the wealthy, well, they needed a new status symbol. The luxury class suddenly needed to prove they had free time. And free time in the early 20th century meant tennis courts, ocean liners, and long lazy afternoons on the beach. It meant your body had been somewhere glorious. A tan slowly began to mean something it had never meant before: leisure. And then came Coco Chanel.
Now, most of you ladies will recognize Gabrielle Coco Chanel from the brand, the clothing, the shoes, the handbags like this one in American Curiosity, red, white, and blue. But for you guys out there, she was basically a big-time fashion designer and a huge socialite of her time, and she had a huge impact on the American suntan.
The story goes like this. Around 1923, Coco Chanel returned from a French Riviera vacation. Beaches, yachts, and sunshine. She was visibly bronzed, and instead of retreating indoors to recover her pale composure, she paraded into the world like she had invented something new. Photographers noticed, fashion magazines noticed, and fashionable women noticed. Now, it would be too simple to say Coco Chanel invented the modern suntan. The cultural tide was already turning, but Chanel gave it permission. She gave the bronzed look its first real celebrity stamp. And by 1929, the golden tan was openly fashionable. And just like that, centuries of social logic flipped on its head. The 1920s were erupting with change. Women were cutting their hair short, raising their hemlines, driving automobiles, smoking cigarettes in restaurants, and dancing to jazz until midnight. There they were, piece by piece, walking away from Victorian restraint, and a tan fits perfectly into that revolution. A tan said, "My body is active and attractive, modern, outdoors, and free." It was not just a color, it was a statement. And once Americans decided tanning was desirable, the industry that followed is one for the history books. Products arrived almost immediately, because American business has never met a desire it did not want to bottle and sell. Early tanning formulas were not designed to protect you from the sun. They were designed to help you tan faster while burning slightly less. It was all orange gels, tropical oils, and coconut fragrances. The beach became a ritual with accessories. By the 1950s, Coppertone had made tanning mainstream across America. The marketing was not about safety, it was about speed, getting a faster, deeper tan. Look like you spent the whole summer outside, and the scent of those products told others you lived for the beach. Meanwhile, swimsuits kept shrinking. The bikini arrived after World War II, just in time for beaches, resort towns, and mass tourism to collide in the post-war American boom. Tan lines became their own kind of trophy, proof that you had been somewhere worth going, proof that summer had found you and that you had the time to enjoy it. By the 1970s, someone had a remarkable idea. What if you did not need the sun at all? A German scientist named Friedrich Wolf had been experimenting with ultraviolet light to help athletes recover from training. He noticed that UV exposure darkened their skin, and from those experiments, the modern tanning bed was born, first appearing around 1975, with the first commercial tanning salon reportedly opening in Berlin around 1977. By the 1980s, tanning salons were everywhere in America. Strip malls, shopping centers, suburban side streets. Everywhere you looked, there were rows of glowing capsules humming quietly in the dark, each one promising the Riviera on a Tuesday afternoon in January. A tan was no longer seasonal. The tan had officially become a product you could purchase anywhere, anytime, and then came the question, what if you didn't even need the tanning bed? You see, decades earlier, in the 1950s, a University of Cincinnati Children's Hospital researcher named Eva Wittgenstein was studying a compound called dihydroxyacetone, or DHA. It was an oral treatment for children with a metabolic disease called GSD. Wittgenstein noticed something strange. When children spit the liquid out, it stained any skin it touched, like a suntan. Curious, she investigated. Turns out, DHA reacts chemically with amino acids in the outermost dead layer of our skin, producing temporary brown pigments. No UV light needed. No sun, no beach, just chemistry. A quiet little reaction happening in the top layer of your skin, fading naturally as those cells shed away. A medical curiosity became the new foundation of the self-tanning industry. Of course, early self-tanners had a reputation for streaky orange ankles and stained palms. Not the best smell either, but the science kept improving. By the late 20th century, public health warnings about UV damage grew louder and more urgent. Self-tanning creams, sprays, and lotions became the compromise for many Americans. The glow without the consequences.
Now, that's not to say that skin cancer isn't a problem. In fact, starting in the 1920s, there was a dramatic increase in the rate of diagnosis of skin cancer, especially from the 1970s to the early 2000s. And since then, it's dropped off slightly, but is still a huge problem, especially for white guys like me who basically stayed in the sun from the 1970s into the early 2000s. Oops.
So that's where the story of the suntan is today. A medical treatment in a children's hospital became a bathroom shelf staple. Then, German athletes became the guinea pigs for the tanning bed. The suntan is a 20th century story, a story overflowing with interesting detail, assembled piece by piece from changing work patterns, women's liberation, celebrity influence, chemistry, and the bikini. In less than 100 years, the tan was transformed from social stigma to a fashion statement. If stories like this make you curious about what else has such interesting backstory, hit that subscribe button. We release new American Curiosity episodes every week, but you can also watch another one right now.